I come to my interest in food earnestly. I started my career as an eater in infancy. I'm hoping that you did as well. My real education and my real beginning and the real reason I'm here started actually when I left Los Angeles as a teenager and had the opportunity to go to the University of Pacific in Stockton, California. Now, how many of you had the chance to visit Stockton? That's good. Now, how many of you probably have a notion about what Stockton is based on what it looks like today? Probably a lot of us. I mean, it's one of the cities that really has a lot of trouble. But when I went there, which was just a few weeks ago, I promise you, actually it looked quite a bit different. And in fact, my home where I lived was surrounded by asparagus fields. There were cherries and almonds growing everywhere. It was the first time I got the realization that food didn't come from the grocery store. And it started a lifelong interest that I've had in understanding the challenge that we have in somehow balancing our relationship with food and our relationship with the natural world in such a way that we don't end up destroying ourselves or the world upon which we depend. And that is the subject in many ways of what this conversation today is about. A little more specific, but it's an interesting place to get here. So first of all, let me ask you, how many people have a sense of how big the food economy is in just Sonoma County? And Terry can't answer because he knows. But for the rest of you, just a ballpark. Just yell it out. What do you think? What's a ballpark? 1 million? Billion? 1 billion? Not bad. 5 million? So we got to go higher. I'll give you that. A little bit lower than that. How about 2? 2 billion. $2 billion. Now, what percentage of that at retail, just at the retail, you think is actually right now being sold from local or sourced from local and regional sources? Yes? 5. Okay? Go a little bit more. Somebody else said 10. We're closer to 15, between 12 and 15. And that's great, but it's not nearly enough. Because actually, when I moved up to Stockton, way more of California's produce was local. Way more. We have gone backwards in the last 30 years. When I moved to Sonoma County in the early 80s, Sonoma County's agricultural landscape and food landscape was much more diverse than it is today. So we've actually been moving in the wrong direction, but not everywhere and not every person. And the fact of the matter is that there's been tremendous innovation in our county from the very beginning. And there's tremendous opportunity in our county to do good work. And part of the reason why I've invited these 3 particular guests to join me today to talk to you about it is that each of them represents some of the innovation and the hard work that it's taken to truly connect to create a sustainable Sonoma County. They all represent, in my mind, organizations that are working hard towards being sustainable enterprises. But they also represent the underlying value proposition that must be the core of any sustainability effort, which is that it somehow nurtures our fundamental vitality as human beings. Now, that's a very different definition of the 3-legged stool, isn't it? Because in the end, we're actually not so interested in people or profit or planet. We're actually interested in well-being, our sense of well-being, which is created by our connection to a vibrant and healthy planet. It's created by our sense of connection and a brotherhood and sisterhood with our fellow men and women of our communities. And it's created by our sense of security, that we're not at risk as individuals to fall off the map economically. So it's a little bit different framing, if you would, of sustainability. And I'd like to suggest that these 3 people who are joining us today will share a lot about that. One other contextual note today. We're going to talk a lot about food systems. So by food systems, I don't mean anything else but the entire chain of things that causes us to go from farm to fork. It's very simple, right? But when we actually think about it, that food chain starts actually before the farm, with the people who provide seeds and implements and fertilizers. And it ends far beyond the plate. It ends where we finally send wastes to be disposed of and recycled in the environment. So we have to take a very broad view of what a food system is. But it's important for us when we think about opportunities to think about it in broad categories. It's good to think about production. It's good to think about what we do to add value to things, it's good to think about distribution. And in some ways, all three of our panelists here represent different chunks of that supply chain, if you would. Make sense? All right, well, let me introduce our guests today. And I want to say that their detailed biographies are available to you in your pamphlet handout. I want to refer them to you. But I am really pleased to be joined by Rich Martin, who's the Director of Marketing for Redwood Hill Farms and Creamery. How many of you have enjoyed Redwood Hill product? All right, there we go. That's a good thing. It could be some of the best goat cheese I've ever had. With Tom Scott, who's the Vice President and General Manager of Oliver's Market. And I'll do the same thing. How many of you had the opportunity to shop at an Oliver's? Excellent. If you haven't had a chance, I really encourage you to experience it. And for those that might think it's a surprising addition, but not at all to me, I'm very pleased to invite and welcome Barbara Weir, the Nutrition Services Manager for Kaiser Permanente. And how many Kaiser members do we have? We've got a lot of Kaiser members. So the reason, again, each of these folks are with us today is because they represent an important set of insights and steps in that creation of a local food economy. So without further ado, let's hear from them. Rich, let me start with you, and we rehearsed this all to an nth degree, so I want you to know it's all I'll give you a mic, yeah, that'd be good. How about like this? No, it's behind the backs, it's basketball season. There you go. Let me start with you. And why don't we start with your definition of what a regionally integrated food supply is, or food system is. What does it mean to you? Those are a lot of fancy words.
Well, for Redwood Hill, we really function in a couple of roles, sort of at the front end of an integrated or connected food system. As you mentioned, we have our own goat farm that we've had for about 45 years, and then about 19 years ago, the owner decided in an effort really to keep the goat farm going and to make it economically viable to actually start making value-added goat milk products, cheese, yogurt, kefir, and to start selling them at places like Oliver's in order to keep the farm going. So our role in the food system is really as a farmer and as a processor, if you will, or manufacturer, and ultimately for all of you, a brand. And I think as the business has grown, we have also started sourcing from other farms, not being able to get all the milk that we needed from just our farm. So we are both the farmer, and we're also the processor, the manufacturer that has relationships with other farms. And I think to us that there's always been connections in the food, in the supply chain. There's always been some kind of a connection between a manufacturer and a farmer. There's always been a connection between a manufacturer and a retailer. To me, it's the nature of that connection that has changed. It's not, particularly in Sonoma County, it's really not just transactional anymore. It's not, I'm going to give you as little money as possible for your milk, for example, and hope that you'll still give it to me. It's really more of a mutually beneficial, I'll use the word sustainable relationship, where there's a continuous feedback loop. So there's a real relationship, and there's a sharing of information and ideas and best practices and challenges, issues. A lot of transparency involved in that. So understanding what the farmers are going through right now with the drought, and feed prices are rising, and so they're under pressure because their profit margins are shrinking to the point where, can a farm survive? And so our understanding of their situation, their understanding of our situation, what's happening in the marketplace. So that, and then the relationship that we have with the retailers. I think the way I think about us is, we're a brand that is really accountable to all of the stakeholders, and the stakeholders include the land, the water, the animals, the employees, all of our customers, consumers, everybody. And so there's, in this sort of interconnected food system, there is in my mind anyway, a need for, and a demand more and more for transparency, which is this kind of an overused term these days, but also sustainability in the sense that, yes, everybody wants to know where their food comes from, but that's not enough anymore. You know, they want to know not only where did it come from, and I'd sure like to come by and check it out, but also what are your practices as it relates to water conservation, and how are you handling pest control and herbicides and pesticides, and are you humane certified? Are you feeding the goats or the cows, you know, non-GMO feed? And so, you know, there is I think a real desire among the ultimate, I hate to use the word consumer because it sounds like all they're doing is consuming. Some marketing guy needs to come up with a better term. Food investors or something. That's actually not bad. I'm gonna work on that. I think there's an expectation now that, and you see it in a lot of different industries, I think, a lot of different retail transactions where I really think the consumer wants their dollar that they spent to count for something more than just, I was hungry, now I'm not hungry. They want to contribute to the world the way they want it to be. They want to contribute to a food system that is transparent and sustainable, such that you know, our kids' are actually going to have the natural resources necessary to continue to make the kinds of products we're making now.
So let me ask you something, because when we first were talking about this, and I was talking to you about sort of the traditional sense of a supply chain, you know, which had the farmer here and the processor here and, you know, the retail here, you challenged me and said, no, it's not really like that. You know, we're much more integrated. And you yourself described just a minute ago, you said we're a goat farm, we're a value added, and we're also a brand. In making that journey, making that connection, first of all, why did you do that? And what did you learn? What was important to know as an emerging business, and for others to know that from your experience?
Well, I think that the nature of purchase decisions, you know, continues to evolve, and there's sort of the business reality, which is, in the case of us, we're a farm that wants to survive.
Right.
So, you know, you need to figure out how does that work? Do you simply produce whatever your good is, whether it's milk or vegetables or fruits, and just, you know, sell it to a clearinghouse of sorts, or do you try and create more of a relationship around the food and share it in a way that really reflects? Because you can, you know, we could milk the goats and send it off, and it could be used for who knows what.
Right.
But the idea that you know, our owner, and it's a family-owned business. Jennifer Weiss, you know, started the business 19 years ago and still owns the business. The idea of being able to take something that she had a passion for and turn it into a food product that could be shared with the larger community and allows her to continue to operate the business that she believes in a way that is really sustainable. And then how do you, so you start selling a little bit of product, and then you run into the good old-fashioned business challenges of the cost of production, and am I going to be able to make enough product in order to be able to hit a price point that's going to make sense for a retailer, and then you have all the distribution issues. And so, you know, the idealism of a amazing local organic product kind of runs head-on into the reality of, you know, of just running a business. And I think one of the things that I've learned and I've observed and experienced is the extent to which you're willing to really share the story of your journey, which is really the story of your brand, and invite people to decide, you know, whether that's a story that speaks to them. I think anymore, people want to align themselves with companies that believe what they believe. So, I think in hindsight, with the different brands and companies I've been involved with, I think, being able to articulate that story, I think we're all of us who have brands that are marketing now, are really, we're competing for stories.
Right.
And not just random brand awareness. And I think, things like telling the story in a way that's perfectly factual and transparent and all that, but also using some of the tools like video.
Right.
If I were starting a new business right now, I would do a number of things, including revel in the fact that you're an underdog and that you're a startup in probably one of the best areas of the world to start a food company, and chronicle that, and sort of embrace the fact that you're an underdog and that the people in this community want nothing more than underdogs to succeed. And if you can, tap into the unique terroir of Sonoma County, which is one of 5 or 6 Mediterranean climates on the planet, this is a really unique area, and the consumers want it, the retailers want it. I've traveled around the country and dealt with a lot of different grocery stores, and the difference between what happens when you go sit down with a buyer in Northern California versus if no offense to the Midwest or other areas of the country, but it is different. The buyers here challenge you to innovate and give me something that nobody else has, because we think our consumers, our customers want it.
That's a great image to have here. And I think one of the great tragedies. How many of you think about yourselves as eaters of commodities? Eat commodity, it's interesting because our entire agricultural system is built around the idea that farmers grow commodities. They sell them at commodity boards. There's the idea that everything is the same. But what you've pointed out is the key lesson is actually, if you step outside of that, if you step into the idea of terroir, if you step into the idea of a brand proposition, that opens up a series of doors. And for you, those doors weren't just about market share, although I know that's important, or just about economic sustainability, but it also allowed you to express, if I understand it correctly, the Redwood Hill set of values. And that is what brings us back to that same sustainability proposition, which I think Redwood Hill so deeply represents. So thanks. Let's go on to Tom for a second. Now, Tom, I said, and I'll say it publicly, I love Oliver's as a store. I love to shop there. What is it about Oliver's that I'm sensing? What is it about when I go in there that says, you guys have thought about what a regional food system means, and that you're able to articulate that in the very feel of the market?
We, up until about 5 or 6 years ago, we were operating the way most independent grocery stores have in this area. And there was a certain aha moment we had when Whole Foods was building their store in Cottingtown. And I became just immensely aware of Whole Foods because of the threat that presented to us. And so I was shopping at their Yalupa store all the time, and they had these, one day I went in and they had local strawberries from Oxnard. And it actually offended me because I've been to Oxnard, and Oxnard's very nice, and the strawberries they grow there are delicious, and there was nothing wrong with any of that, except there was nothing about Oxnard that was like Sonoma County, which was my home and that I was connected to. And it led to a series of conversations in our company about this and about what does it mean to be local. And what we sort of derived from those conversations was there was almost a tribal connection to this place. That Sonoma County for us, I mean, if you grew up here, you certainly have that connection. But if you've moved here, y'all know why you moved here. I mean, I'm an LA transplant, and I moved here for a reason, because this place is special and it's wonderful. And, so we started trying to tap into that. And one of the questions we ask ourselves is, all right, so we're talking about local, and we're talking about, you know, everybody should shop local because that'll help the local economy and all this. But we made this decision to start quantifying what we were doing and count how many local suppliers, how many local manufacturers, how many SKUs, stock keeping units we had, and what percentage of our business was coming from Sonoma County products. And just to give you a few ideas, at the end of last year, we had about almost 6,000 local SKUs on our shelf, which represents about 10% of our total mix. But one of the really groovy things about this is about 30% of our sales came from local products. So the people that are shopping with us also have the same sort of visceral connection, I feel, to Sonoma County, that, you know, I believe our wine is better. I believe our dairy products are better. I believe virtually everything that's produced here in Sonoma County as far as food goes is better than it is anywhere else. And I bring this up as part of what community means. I think that there's a place, and I've traveled to other places, and I think this exists all over the world in different ways. I think we're blessed here, and, you know, as you were saying, that Sonoma County is this amazing place where you can grow things and you can do things you can't do in Denver or in Minnesota or something like that. But, you know, those connections are very important. And then this idea of telling stories. Once we sort of tapped into this, we started putting up pictures of the folks we were doing business with. We've got a picture of Jennifer hugging a goat in our store with the fact that they're out in Sebastopol and how many employees that they have, so that you know that if you're making a choice about yogurt, that's a choice that will support that many people. And we started, you know, trying to connect the dots for our for our customers, and it's just been resoundingly successful for us. I mean, it just built on itself over and over again. The more we did, the more success we had with it, and so that's sort of our story.
So, you know, I'm getting this sense that there's these similar kind of epiphanies. At some point on the farm, you recognized I had to do something to save the farm. We wanted to stay in business. We had to change our model. You had to go and see Whole Foods coming down in your home turf and say, hey, we're going to make a stand and change the way that you thought about things and clarify your values and measure. This is an important thing. And to actually go from 6,000 SKUs at 30% sales, that's big. And just to know that. Right, for so many businesses, they might actually not know as much of that information. Now look, I also think that you guys must be an incredible learning laboratory. Every grocery store is. Brands come and go, products are successful and products aren't, trends happen, food happens. But I know that you've noticed some interesting trends about mixes of what's selling and what's not, and that might shed a little bit of light about what the opportunities are. Particularly tell us about the beverage aisle.
You know, our store is a little bit different in that we have strategic advantages on the natural food side of our business that we don't have on the conventional side of our business. But last year, as we were sort of looking through our sales data, we sold more kombucha than we did Coke.
Well, stop right there.
Which actually blew our minds. I mean, we were just like, oh my goodness, that's crazy cool.
What about, you told us about coconut water too. I thought
and coconut water, we sold more, all of the brands of coconut water together on our shelves sold more dollars than all of the sugar-sweetened carbonated beverages on our aisles.
Another big clap, that's great. So
I've got one more.
Good, I'll give you another.
Our number 2 SKU in our chip aisle was cheesy kale chips. Second only to nacho cheese Doritos.
No, it's not really fair. Cheesy kale chips and nacho Doritos. That's a tough thing on the palate. But so, you know, if there was one lesson in that you could take out of the last 5 years, that, you know, if I had known that then, I would have short-circuited a lot of pain or learning. What might that be? What's the one takeaway, if there is one? What comes to mind?
I don't know why more of my brothers in the industry aren't doing this. I've talked to, several of the other local grocers, and everybody's got their foot in the water. But this, to me, we have an internal program we call the Oliver's 300 Project. And it's only something we talk about internally, but we have about 300 local manufacturers like Redwood Hill that we deal with. And we think about it in terms of the movie. Any of you seen this movie, The 300? Right. Well, and we think of ourselves as the same way, that we're the Spartans standing at the gate with our 300 Spartan manufacturers, holding the Persian hordes or the corporate hordes out of our homeland. But there's a place in this that I think when you get to that place where it becomes sort of a mission as opposed to a business strategy, that it just takes on a life. And what I've seen in a lot of local businesses, the ones that are really successful, are the guys that are just all in. They're in not just measuring, how many more incremental pennies can I make at the end of the day, but how can I support these ideals? And that I just wish we would have given ourselves to that earlier, if there was something like that.
I can completely sympathize. I have to tell you, one of my most poignant moments in my journey as a person that's been watching food was actually in very near Oxnard. It was in Santa Paula, and I had two strawberry growers there. One strawberry grower grew predominantly for the local market. He grew fresh local market types of strawberries, delicious. He got per flat about 5 times what the conventional grower did. And when he shared how much more he got per flat, the other strawberry growers in the room literally were speechless. Literally speechless. For about 3 minutes. And then all the buts came up. But I couldn't possibly do that. We couldn't possibly make that change. Yet it still is the case that the price differential that these two growers still exists. And it was a question of, as you said, placing mission in front of a simple economic calculus. And it is a wonderment to me that why there aren't more. And it's clear we have a tremendous opportunity. We have terroir, we have consumers, we have entrepreneurial skills. Now I want to bring it to the last piece, because I think in the end, the reason we have those is because so many of us are concerned about health and a healthy lifestyle. That's really why I wanted to invite Barbara to join us, because many of us don't know the story of Kaiser and Kaiser's relationship to food and healthy eating and regional food systems. I'm hoping you could share a little bit about that. Why is Kaiser interested in this?
Well, Kaiser does have a long history in prevention. They basically, since its inception, have been a proponent for prevention, which is why they became my employer of choice. However, as an organization, it's not been until probably the early 2000s that we really turned the corner with permeating all aspects of what makes a person healthy into not only what we provide to our members with the food, with the material that we provide them when they come in, as well as visitors when they come to our campuses, etc., and to our employees. In particular, in 2003, we had a physician in the Oakland Kaiser that had the idea of starting a farmer's market. Who would have thought? Starting a farmer's market on a hospital campus, kind of odd. But it really got the wheels rolling, and we all remember, I'm sure, the Thrive commercials. We scream, you scream, we all scream for broccoli.
Well, should we do the chant?
And that was just kind of the beginning seed of the message that was coming out and about. And it sort of just built from there and really has taken off. I manage the food service department at Kaiser in Santa Rosa. And in Santa Rosa, well, actually in the whole food service, we have a commissary that prepares 6,000 meals a day that's delivered to all the 21 Northern California Kaisers. And we were inspired by what the physician was doing at Kaiser Oakland and started really evaluating with 3 other groups including calf, and trying to find out, well, where are we sourcing our food from? We're getting our strawberries from Chile and from Lord knows where, and really did a deep dive and found that there was a lot of opportunities with the help of CAF to increase our sourcing more locally of produce. And at this point, we purchase $1.7 million of sustainable food per year, and 18% of our total spend is locally sourced. Our goal is 20% as an organization.
So again, let's stop there. Already, 18% locally sourced. That's an incredible contribution.
Yeah.
Let's give this a big shout out. And just in case, just so not too many acronym soups, if you're not familiar, CAF is the Community Alliance with Family Farms. Is there anybody from CAF with us here today? If not, well, there are some folks that may be out in the back, so I encourage you to learn more about this organization. Wonderful group.
Yeah, and so this is food that's showing up in front of the patient when they enter into the hospital. And that was the start. Since then, we've developed policies, we've developed criteria, we've developed guidelines for our on-campus cafeterias. They're usually separate vendors. We have it built into our contract template, a quite ambitious environmental, sustainable, local food purchased, and then of course the health aspects as well, into the contract template. So the RFPs, when they go out, that's part of it. And we work very closely with those vendors. Also, in the if you go on our campus, you'll see lots of signs around the facility that promote healthy eating. We have visual boards, and in the cafeterias we have signs on the pictures and things on the walls that all speak the same language. We now have a farmer's market. Actually, we've had one for quite some time, and most of the Kaiser campuses do have farmer's markets, and we use those farmer's markets as an opportunity also to educate. So once a month we also feature berries, let's say in the fall, or melons or something, and show people what kind of local produce is produced here in Sonoma County and make a greater awareness of that. So that's kind of where we're at.
That's great.
And it's very exciting.
Let me ask, because I know you're a registered dietitian yourself. So why do you feel like the public has taken an interest in these kinds of locally grown foods? Is there a message here for those people who are thinking about this as a business, an opportunity to work with you? I'm just trying to get at what that motivation is, because there sounds to me you guys are hearing things from your customers about what is being asked of you. And I'm wondering if there's a sort of another message that Kaiser is experiencing from its patients and members.
Well, yeah, when I visit patients in the hospitals, when I go on my rounds, people will ask me, where is your produce coming from? Are these eggs cage-free? So consumers are getting, patients, consumers, whatever you want to call them, they're getting a lot more savvy and wanting to know where we're sourcing our food from. So we're very proud to say that we are sourcing them, consider a lot of them from local places. And it's been kind of an evolution. We made some changes early on in the cafeterias, and really, because we felt when patients go in the hospital, or they go to the doctor's office and have a treadmill, and the physician says, you need to cut out your French fries and your chicken tenders or whatever it might be. And then they come to the cafeteria, and that's what we serve. Well, that's a disconnect. So that really got us going in the cafeteria, saying this is not okay. And we got so excited that we made all sorts of changes, and it was pretty much of an uprising, as you can imagine. People weren't quite there yet. Food is a very emotional thing, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So we kind of had to dial it back a little bit, regroup, and kind of go a little bit slower. But we took our French fryer out of the cafeteria. We have incorporated many more plant-based items, really reducing the amount of meat item both on our patient menu and on our cafeteria menus. And sweetened beverages is another area we looked at. And I think people are really getting that all of this is so important to nourish ourselves food is so much more than just going to the grocery store and pulling something that was made way far away. So it's been an evolution, but we don't get nearly the complaints that we used to at all.
So think about the story here. So, it starts here with trying to keep a farm going and building out values and addressing emerging consumer demands. You finding a values proposition to ground something that you saw practically in the marketplace, but also that was inside of the organization. And you dealing with patients needing to hold their health. Now the sustainability proposition here I think is close the full loop, right? It's not just about what goes on in the planet. It's not just about what goes on profitability, but it's actually what goes on with our very sense of vitality and well-being. So is that your experience? Is food medicine, is this a sector that we should be thinking about as a root place to build from for a healthy community and a healthy economy? What do you think, Rick?
Yes.
Good. One vote for yes. That's a good answer. We can just stop there, right?
That was a yes/no question, right?
Yeah, it was more or less. No.
One of the things that it kind of falls in my area of responsibility is product development, and so I'm often found roaming the aisles at various grocery stores, just staring aimlessly at food products. And what's interesting to me is, while I think we're still in the middle of an obsession with macronutrients, everybody wants to know how much protein is in their Greek yogurt that they're eating every morning. And I appreciate the fact that you're all eating yogurt. But I'm starting to see a real trend and a real understanding about the value of micronutrients. And the fact that kale chips are even being made, let alone the #2 bestseller, I think is a real testament to and again, I think we're just lucky that we live in this area, but this idea that food really is the best preventative medicine. And I think that's going to be sort of one of the real areas of opportunity for food entrepreneurs. Figure out what the consumers will figure it out. We're all eating chia seeds now, and when I was a kid, that's something you watered and.
It was a little statue thing, wasn't it? Right?
Yes, it was. I didn't understand it at the time, nor do I still understand it. But the fact that it's in everything, and no one is eating all of these superfoods, and we're all eating those things because of the micronutrients, not because it's loaded with protein.
Let me do a quick survey here. How many of you had kale chips? Whoa! Look at that. He makes them. Oh, good. Yum. Let's give Tom a shot. And hey, I'm gonna leave just enough time for maybe handle a couple of questions from the audience if you've got them. So think ahead a little bit. This is a great opportunity. Tom.
Yeah, I think when we talk about food as medicine, it's actually more of the immune system as opposed to something you might take to fix a problem.
Beautiful.
One of the things that I've experienced, and I think that I imagine those of you who live in this area do, is the value and the connections between, say, Oliver's Market, Redwood Hill, Clover, any of the Amy's Kitchens, all of these great local producers that we have. And one of the things about putting up all these pictures over our stores and telling these stories is almost everybody that comes in has a connection to one of the 300 Spartans on the team, so to speak. And those connections start growing deeper, and they connect us and they fulfill us, and they connect us to this place. And I think there's something really vital about that. And it keeps us well. It doesn't make us well after we're sick, but it keeps us well.
It's a beautiful image. Food is part of the immune system.
Well, and as a dietitian and as my field of choice, that's certainly what I believe strongly. Food is medicine, and I would have to second what Rich said as far as the evolution of nutrition and its role in health and disease prevention the focus on micronutrients right now is just going to help that and bring that more into the forefront and get away from always thinking about the big macronutrients. And I think that encompasses everything as far as trying to make the health of our population.
I couldn't agree with you more. As I listen to the three of you, I'm struck with these three fundamental themes. One, this is a special place. There's a terroir here as a physical terroir, as well as a cultural terroir here that makes this an ideal place for it to be rooted in a vibrant and expanding entrepreneurial food sector. And two, there's a consumer base here that's willing to experiment with you, that they're willing to try new products. We're willing to make our own kale chips. We're willing to go out there and be at the leading edge of using food as a part of our immune strategy. And that three, that we're supported by powerful leaders and institutions that care about health first. And that to me is the tipping point. When we start to talk about sustainability and we bring it home to how are our children growing up, how healthy do we feel, how full of life are we? That's the moment where sustainability stops being something that environmentalists talk about and we're talking about over at the table with each other. And that is a turning point. I want to thank the three of you for being here and spending this time with me. And I want to turn right now and offer some time to see if our guests have any questions for you. So let me start right here. And I tell you what, how are you doing on mics? Can you help with a handheld for us? There we go. Give us just a second to get it together. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us today. I'm sorry?
I'm going to take it.
Okay. Right there.
Thank you.
Why don't you share your name with us?
My name is Elaine Wellen, and I work at Science Sociology. I wanted to say that there was one more feedback loop when you, Tom, quantified the local produce that you make available to us, because I'm part of an eco discussion group, and we were to come back with a personal food policy, which is a really wonderful thing to think about, for all of us. What do we believe is right? You've said what you believe is right and how you've incorporated it in your work. Well, what do we believe is right and how do we incorporate it in our lives? So I said to this group, this one was through the Northern California Earth Institute, and I said, I will eat more locally sourced food. And I know I will be able to because when I shop at Oliver's, there's a thing at the bottom of the receipt that says you had, a certain percent came locally, so that I know that I'm progressing on my goal when I look at my receipt. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Right behind, we'll work your way, and we'll have time for just a few. Thank you. Go ahead and share your name again.
Hi, my name is Autumn Buss. I'm with the Community Garden Network of Sonoma County. I love what all of you have to say. The one thing that troubles me in so many of these local food discussions is the aspect of affordability. And so I'm wondering, obviously this is talked about a lot. How do you get this healthy, fresh, local food into the hands of people who may not have as many dollars as some of us do? But I'm wondering if you have any of you have any insights or comments on that particular issue. I know there's some movement with food stamps and things like that right now. But if you have anything else to add?
Let's let Tom take a crack at it, and I'll share some thought with you.
I think in some ways it depends on what it is. Certainly there's products that are manufacturer-based that are sort of value-added products, like Redwood Hill yogurt, that have made it into more traditional distribution lines. And on those products, Oliver's is at a scale, and I only mention that not because we're so big, but we're small, we're real small potatoes in the overall food market. We can compete really heavily. I mean, you can buy items like Redwood Hill yogurt that are competitive with Yoplait and other choices if they're in those regular distribution lines. Now, when it comes to fresh produce or fresh meat grown in the area, it becomes more difficult. If there's a processor like Petaluma Poultry, again, if those distribution vehicles are there, we you know, the incremental difference between Petaluma Poultry chicken and Foster Farms chicken, it's actually at our store, we price against Foster Farm. So it's very close. It's within a dime, I think, a pound. So I think that part of it is as the economy moves in that direction and these distribution systems mature, it's going to become more and more like that. When we first started selling organic produce at Oliver's, we sold it at a loss just to get in the business. I mean, it was a net loss. We made money, but we threw so much of it away because customers didn't understand it. This was 20 years ago, that we didn't make money on it. But that's not the case anymore. You know, there's enough distribution of organic produce in the market where we can sell it relatively close to, you know, at least from where I sit, you know. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It's a fundamental question of our time, and I'd like to suggest from my experience that it's not possible for us to grow food inexpensively enough so that everyone whose income inequality is nature of America could eat the same kind of food. The answer is not within the food system to drive food prices to the bottom of the ground, which has been our methodology, but rather to meaningfully address income inequality in America, which is a tax policy, it's an economic development policy, it is an honest and real jobs policy that addresses the communities in Sonoma County that need that, as communities all over the country need it. And there's an opportunity for us there.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of go into that because I think with income inequality, we also get educational inequality. And one of the key drivers in our business is the educational attainment level of our customers. That in order to understand the value of kombucha in your life, you have to have a certain amount of, maybe not education, but you have to have a certain amount of intellectual vigor to understand how, you know, fermented stuff like that could be really good for you. And like I said, I think that's part of the social justice issue that goes with the food chain, is once there's enough people that are educated enough, they'll create the demand and the markets will emerge behind them.
Excellent. Well, we're about to run out of time, and I actually think it's good that we ended on that particular question, because in the end, a sustainable food system is a root system in society. We must have food to live. Most of us enjoy it at least 3 times a day if we're lucky. Many of us in our communities only enjoy it once, or sometimes not at all. We cannot have a sustainable food system in an unsustainable economy. And so there is an inherent relationship between the two. And I've come to learn that there's a limit to which I can solve the problems of an unsustainable economy within the context of an unsustainable food system. These guys are doing the job and doing the work. We all have to continue to go out and do the work to make sure that we're carrying what we've learned here about creating good products at good prices along with good jobs, so that we can lift all of us to a better future. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the hosts of the Sustainable Enterprise Conference. And in particular, I want to thank Lisa Badenford, who helped me and all of us get here with her excellent preparation. Enjoy the rest of the day.